Okay, let's dive into a thrilling botanical mystery today. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to act as horticultural detectives. Because look, we've all been there, right? You walk outside, coffee in hand, you're ready to admire your landscaping, only to find that one of your prized plants is looking, well, a little less than alive. So today, we're systematically break down exactly how to investigate these garden mysteries, and we're going to focus on a particularly notorious culprit.
Now, before you grab that chemical spray in a panic, which, let's be honest, is what most of us instinctively want to do, let's put on our detective hats and figure out what is actually attacking your plants. Jumping to conclusions without solid evidence is pretty much the easiest way to waste your money, harm your local ecosystem, and ultimately fail to save the plant. We absolutely have to look at the evidence, understand the environment, and properly identify the problem before we make a single move.
And this brilliantly illustrates our crime scene. We've got a once healthy creeping juniper now covered in dead, brown patches that seem to appear completely out of nowhere. I mean, one day it's a lush green carpet, and the next, it looks like someone literally took a blowtorch to it. When you see this kind of rapid, shocking damage, it is a clear signal that an investigation is desperately needed.
Section 1. Suspect Profile. Phomopsis Blight.
Notice how the evidence presents itself here for this very common, highly destructive pathogen. While Phomopsis loves to attack stressed junipers, it's also a known enemy of cottonwoods, cedars, pines, and even some small fruits and hardwood trees. If you look at the larger dieback on the left, you see the obvious browning of the branch tips, right? That's the macro-level destruction. But the real smoking gun is on the right. If you look incredibly closely at the stems, you'll find these tiny, discolored, sunken lesions. That is where the fungus has essentially choked off the plant's vascular system.
To build our case properly, we've got to define our terms, starting with blight. Now, blight isn't just some generic word for a sick plant. It specifically refers to an incredibly rapid, shocking discoloration and death of plant tissues, like twigs, foliage, or flowers. Honestly, it's the sheer speed and the visual severity of it that earns it the name blight.
Next up is the canker, which we just saw in that close-up. A canker is the actual physical wound on the plant. It's a dead, sunken, and often discolored area on the bark or stem where the plant tissue has literally stopped growing because the pathogen invaded it. So while the rest of the branch tries to keep growing, the cankered area acts like a roadblock, cutting off water and nutrients to everything above it.
And finally, we have dieback. This is the heartbreaking result of those cankers. Dieback is exactly what it sounds like. It's the progressive death of a shoot, branch, or even a root that starts at the very tip and slowly marches backward toward the main body of the plant. It is literally the plant slowly starving to death from the extremities inward.
Section 2. The MO. The disease triangle.
Fungal pathogens don't just magically appear and destroy a plant because they feel like it. They follow very strict biological rules. For a disease to actually take hold and cause damage, you absolutely must have three things present simultaneously. First, a susceptible host, so a plant that is genetically vulnerable or weakened by stress. Second, an active pathogen, the actual microscopic fungus or bacteria. And third, a favorable environment, like high humidity, soggy soil, or poor airflow. If any one of these three legs is missing, the disease simply cannot happen.
But if that triangle is complete, the fungus spreads like wildfire. Look at how Phomopsis moves through a garden. It hitches a ride on the wind, it splashes from plant to plant via rain or overhead sprinklers, it gets carried by tiny insects, or, and this is a big one, it's spread by us using contaminated, unwashed pruning tools. Yep, we are often the unwitting accomplices in this crime.
Section 3. Making the diagnosis, ruling out the usual suspects.
So now that we know how the killer operates and how it spreads, it's time to step into the lab and properly investigate. The very first step in any investigation is determining if the damage is biotic or abiotic. Biotic means a living pathogen is involved, like our suspect, the Phomopsis fungus, or bacteria, viruses, or insects. Abiotic means the damage is from non-living environmental stress. We're talking things like a sudden winter freeze, heavy clay soil with poor drainage, or maybe a neighbor's herbicide drift. You have to always rule out abiotic environmental issues first before assuming you have a contagious disease on your hands.
Once you do suspect a biotic issue, you must distinguish between signs and symptoms.
And this is a massive distinction. A symptom is just the plant's reaction to being under attack, things like wilting, yellowing leaves, or dropping foliage. A sign, however, is the actual physical presence of the criminal itself. It's seeing the fungal spores, the bacterial ooze, or the actual insect right there on the leaf.
Notice the striking difference here. On the left, we've got a blatant sign, an actual, visible orange fungal mass erupting from the plant tissue. You are literally looking at the pathogen. On the right, we simply see symptoms, chlorosis or yellowing, and brown scorch marks on the leaves. Symptoms tell you the plant is sick, but signs tell you exactly who is making it sick.
Section 4. The Cure. Integrated Pest Management. Okay, once we've positively identified our suspect by finding the signs and interpreting the symptoms, it's time to deploy our ultimate weapon to permanently break that disease triangle we talked about earlier. We do this through a strategy called Integrated Pest Management, or IPM. IPM is a holistic, ecosystem-based approach. It forces us to look at the big picture and focus on long-term ecological solutions rather than just panicking and immediately reaching for the most toxic chemical spray we can find at the local hardware store.
You can see the 4 pillars of IPM presented here, which gives you a really structured arsenal to fight back. We start with cultural management. These are simple habits like proper watering and spacing plants for airflow. Then there's biological management, introducing beneficial insects to eat the bad ones. Next, host selection, just choosing plant varieties that are naturally resistant to disease in the first place. And finally, chemical management, using fungicides or soaps, but only as a carefully targeted last resort.
So, how do we apply IPM directly to our Phomopsis case? Simple. We break the environment leg of the triangle. We water properly to reduce plant stress. We selectively prune our junipers to let the wind blow through and really dry out the foliage. We meticulously remove and destroy any infected branches, and we clean up the dead needles on the ground where those spores love to hide out. And only after doing all of that do we even consider a fungicide.
The absolute biggest takeaway I want you to remember from this entire explainer is that accurate identification is the cornerstone of plant health. Think about it. If you try to treat a fungal issue, like Phomopsis, with an insect spray, or if you try to cure heavy clay soil by dumping chemicals on it, you will fail. You absolutely have to know your enemy to defeat it.
I'm going to leave you with this final thought. The next time you walk out into your garden and see a wilting, browning plant, are you going to panic and blindly spray? Or are you ready to act as the lead detective in your own backyard ecosystem? Look for the signs and break that disease triangle. The health of your garden is entirely in your hands. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and happy investigating.